Hello and welcome to a new video about deep reinforcement learning. In the last video, we have learned how to multiply agents to train them simultaneously and faster. Additionally, we have learned how to modify the environment to give us a color feedback about winning or losing. And I gave you a little homework, which we will solve today together. And with this, let's get started. In case you did not watch the previous video, then better do it now before continuing with this one. So let's get started with adding a new target to our prefab. So we go to the prefab, add a 3D object. It will be also a sphere like the agent, but a bit larger sphere. So we scale everything to make the sphere bigger. And then we also have to move the sphere upward so that it's on top of the plane and not in between. Then we continue by giving this target also a material or a color. So we go to our assets under materials, and there we add or create a new material and define a color for it. And then we use drag and drop to give this material to our target. And then we can figure out which color we want to assign. So we click on the material and then we can change the color. In the prefab mode, this looks already not too bad, but I can recommend you to just go to the game view, because in the game view we will see how it looks when the shaders are on and when we have a light in the scene and so on. And then you can give a proper color to the big target. And in my case, it will be something like violet. Then we also click on the target and add the rigid body component so that also our target will obey the laws of physics. And the last step is to then just go to our script, so to the assets and then to our mono behavior script, where we have to modify a bit. There we first introduce a public material for the change in the color of the floor, and it will be the big win material. We also define the public variable big target, which will be really then the position of the target. From this big target, we want to initialize that it will be also randomly spawned somewhere on the surface with a shift of 1 unit, since the radius of it is 1 unit, and we want to have it on top of the plane. And then we also have to set a start velocity of the target because we want it to be moving. So for this we have to define the rigid body component of the angular and linear velocity. And the angular velocity will be 0, but the linear velocity should have some random value. And this random value will basically scale with the speed, or it will be the speed of our big target. So for this, to make it faster or slower, we can introduce a public variable again, so one which we can control from Unity, and it will be the velocity scale, and this we just multiply to our random value, and then we have a random velocity in the dimensions of the plane, so in the x and z dimension, and there will be no velocity in the y direction. Now there's one more thing to modify. So a random value goes from 0 to 1, but we want the ball moving also in the negative directions. So for example, it should not only move forward, but also backward. So we have to shift our range from 0 to 1 to a range from -1 to 1. So I subtract a half and then multiply with 2. That's the basic idea of this operation, what I'm just programming here. So that we have a scale that goes from negative to positive. So forward and backward, left and right. Then in the collect observations, we obviously also want to add the target location to our observation space. And this gives 3 more dimensions for the agent as an input sensor measurement. And then once the agent receives the actioner, we have to basically check if the distance to the big target is now smaller than a certain threshold. And if this is true, and I hope you now know how to calculate this threshold, then we will set a reward of 2 units, and we also will assign a material to the floor. So the floor should also change the color to the big win. And then we end the episode. And that's it. This is the only modification we have to do. And by the way, if you want to see more of these videos, subscribe and hit the like button. But now you will see on the bottom left of the screen that there will be a red message. We got an error message, so something doesn't work. And also this happens sometimes during programming, but we can just take a look what it is by opening the script. And then we also see in this message that in line 70 there's an error. And what we have here explicitly as an error is that Unity doesn't understand our data type which we are using. So we have to make some modifications here. And the problem are the brackets which I'm using here. So I want to get rid of these brackets. I want to define it differently. I want to have a data type which is just a float and not a double, if you know what this word means. But basically, yes, I have to modify all the entries of the dimensions so that there are only float values standing there. And this means, okay, I just here rescale my velocity by a certain factor, and then the program will run. Note here that it's not completely equal to the expression which we had before, but for this purpose it's okay. So then we can go back to our script, and then we can create a new material for the underground, because we want the underground to be also changing in color depending on which target we hit. And then we are ready to go. We can go to the agent, we go to the script, and then we can assign the material for the big win, which will be the floor material. And I want to have it in a way that the floor will be a bit yellowish if we hit the small target, and it will be green when we hit the big target. And yeah, then we can also assign the public velocity. And now, since we also have more observations in our sensor, we have to also modify the behavior parameters. So there we have to increase the number of the vector space from 8 to 11, since we have the X, Y, and Z coordinate of our big target additionally to what we had before. And now, as always, it's a good thing to try heuristically or manually if everything works. So we start the game without giving the agent a brain, but rather controlling it manually. So we go to the prefab, and we see already that all these violet big targets are moving with random different velocity and different direction. And then when we go to the game mode, we can also control the agent. And when we let the agent fall from the platform changes its color to red. So now we can also try out what's going on when we try to hit the big target, which is not too easy. But if we try to hit the big target here, then you see already something. And that's cool that we see this. It should get green, like here, but it did not get green. And here we see another thing, which is looking very strange. And you might already have a guess where this comes from. But luckily, we see it since we use our heuristic method, and also because we changed the color of the underground. So the things which we saw is that both the ball and the fixed targets are spawned randomly. That means that they can be spawned on top of each other, which explains the jump. Or if you take a look at this slow motion now, the agent falls and the small target is spawned for 1 frame next to the agent, and then the value will be assigned as a reward and the floor will change to this grayish color. So go back in the video if you want to see it again. But basically there's the problem. We have to spawn them not completely random. So on episode begin, the targets should get a valid position. And valid means they should have a certain distance away from our agent. So for this, I introduce a new function, which takes the Y position as the shift on the height. And then it creates randomly a position on the plane and asks if this new position is far enough away from our agent. If it has this minimum distance, then accept the position. If not, if we are smaller than the minimum distance, then create a new position and ask the same question again. So this makes sure that the targets never overlap with the player, and it assures that the player never gets a reward for something which he has not done himself. And then we can check in the heuristic if this works or not, but it looks good so far, so there's no... So you have now everything to start a new training, besides that there is still this moment when 2 targets are spawned on top of each other. I will not solve this here because I think it's interesting, but you can think about how to solve it and implement it yourself. And if you have questions, write them in the comments. So with this, all conditions are fulfilled to have a successful training. And during the training, you can have different training strategies, which I want to teach you in the next episodes. So subscribe to the channel if you don't want to miss it. Thank you for watching. And if you want to support me on my journey, please consider to like and subscribe. And if you want to support me a bit more, take a look at Patreon. There you will see videos earlier, and I will upload videos which are too detailed for YouTube. So thanks a lot and see you next time.